Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Again for the First Time podcast. And I really appreciate all of you who've come back week after week. We have an eclectic mix of guests each week, and some of them tell compelling stories, some motivating, some sad, some funny, and some just make you think. My guest today, you may say, Darren, who is this guy? Like, who is this person and why is he here? And that's great. We're going to give him a listen. But I'm gonna ask your question. Your question is this: who is this person? This person is everybody. This person speaks not for a generation, but from a voice from a generation. There are so many questions I had when I was making the transition from being a teenager to being an adult, and it's gotta suck in a lot of ways. And before I introduce my guest, and my guest's 22. It's not like he just turned 18. Um, there's so many pressures, and it's not like woe is me kind of stuff, but it's amazing to me again that you can get your head blown off in a war at 18, but you can't buy a vape pen until you're 21. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You can vote for the person who could blow up the world in a nuclear strike at 18, but you're not adult enough to smoke a cigarette until you're 21. So it's just so many questions I have. And the reason that we picked Quinn Johnson to be our guest today is very simple. He loves psychology. He is a student in so many things. By the way, funny as all heck. So Quinn Johnson is our guest today. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. Good to be here, Darren. Thanks for having me on today.
Listen, we appreciate it more than you know. And before we get started, because I have a feeling that our time together will go quickly. Tell people who might not know you a little bit about yourself. Anything you want to say?
All right. Well, nice to meet you all. My name's Quinn. I've lived here in California my entire life, Central Valley area. Lived in the valley actually my adult life. Before that, I was living in the foothills up in near Squaw Valley, Dunlap, just below Sequoia, and that's where I was mostly born and raised. And I've gone to school in Reedley, gone to school in Fresno, worked a variety of jobs around all the valley, and I'm happy to be here and share a little bit of my perspective today.
So I mentioned to our audience today that you're into psychology, and I want to talk
Hmm.
about that. But I first want to talk about growing up in Squaw Valley. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it's God's country up there.
Oh,
Talk
it's
a little bit
beautiful.
about what it's like to be raised there, because it's
So,
a throwback.
oh, it's fantastic. I go up there every once in a while just to go visit. And it's gonna sound a little bit crazy. I moved down here because I didn't have access to a lot of things growing up in Squaw Valley, internet, TV, as you guys know it. I had three TV channels. I had CBS,
Hmm.
Fox for Sunday football, and a
Hmm.
Spanish cooking show,
Right, right.
which I learned some fantastic recipes.
What's your go-to? So you want to impress a significant other? What do you make?
Ooh, I'm not great of a cook, but if I'm going for it, I
Hmm.
like to make a good homemade chili.
Very nice, very
Good homemade
nice,
chili,
nice.
with buffalo.
You can't go wrong with that, my friend.
It's fantastic. Had some chili last night actually.
Very
But
nice.
growing up in Squaw Valley, you learn a lot about, and it's gonna sound sad, being more alone, finding things to do with yourself, stuff like that. And the biggest difference from living down in the Central Valley and being Squaw Valley, because it's only 40-minute drive up there,
Night and day, though.
it's the silence. There's not a single sound when you go up there. You cannot hear cars passing, you cannot hear horns, anything like that. You hear nature. And I gained a newfound respect of living up there when I moved into the valley. And living up there for 18 years, I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing. I learned a lot of valuable lessons. I learned what would, you know, today be considered a lot of man's work or hard labor work. It was just valuable things that I learned up there. I didn't have a lot of time for TV. And as I grew up a little bit, I got access to video games and stuff like that that I could play with my brother. And
Mhm.
then, that's where that started. But as soon as I graduated, this was all through high school. I lived up there. So it was a 40 to 45-minute drive down to school every day, waking up at 5:30 a.m., getting ready to go. And I got a little bit of a freedom moving out after well, actually I didn't even turn 18 yet. I moved out when I was 17, got an apartment in Reedley, and went from there. Just sort of been here since.
So, before we kind of segue into your life from
Hmm.
18 on, it's very interesting. A lot of people take that silence and being alone, and it's like anything else, it's a tool. And you can use that tool to hurt yourself, to hurt others, or to kind of have some introspection. And, you know, I would argue, and I don't know you too long, is that maybe that helped you look inward and why you want to pursue a career in psychology now.
No,
And
most definitely a factor. Most
yeah,
definitely a factor.
why do you think it is? And we can just say social media or video games or TV. Why do you think so many people are busy being busy and less busy being introspective? Because so many people, and especially I deal with this with people in addiction, they have a tough time being with themselves.
Hmm. So this is, from my perspective anyways,
Mhm.
all based on the environment you grow up in. So what we learn is are you familiar with Freudian time, Sigmund Freud, things
Oh,
like that? Have
sure,
you heard of
sure.
him? Yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
There's
I'm more of a what was his disciple? I
uh,
can't think of his name
um,
now. But go ahead.
but basically Sigmund Freud I see him as one of the all-time greatest philosophers of all time because he
Carl Jung.
managed
That
to,
was it.
yep,
Carl Jung.
yep,
That was my guy.
Carl Jung.
Yep.
I see him as the all-time greatest bullshitter because he managed to convince basically an entire century and populace of people to believe things that weren't true. But one of the main things he did teach, which was true, was, are people born evil or good? Or does it have to do with the environment that they're brought up? And the answer is actually a little surprising. It's actually both. As you know, men and women are born with genetic things that, they're just good at. For example, women are inherently born to multitask better. That's why they're so fantastic at doing multiple things at once. And I'm infinitely jealous of that. Now, guys, we're genetically born to be a little bit bigger, physically stronger, things like that. And those genetic components play in with our upbringing. So someone who's more introspective would probably be brought up in a more a lack of social atmosphere, i.e., someone like me. I was brought up, I socialized, I had friends, I had kids, but it wasn't in a vast amount. I didn't have that exposure. And I'll be honest, I wasn't born in the time where, cell phones were a thing. When I was born, flip phones, even like the old 90s big old block phones, I was still part of that.
Right.
I had a VHS until I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And
Let's watch that tape again.
exactly. And you had to, if it came undone, you had to go rewind the
Yep.
VHS. So someone born and raised in my situation tends to be a little bit more introspective because you have all the time to think about something. You're just going to end up thinking about everything since you got the time. And someone who's more trying to keep themselves busy is raised in an environment that way. Because you think about it, someone who's born and raised in a city has exposure to all these different sounds, stimulations from the moment they are born. They have all of that. So as they grow up, their mind becomes more wired to keep themselves busy, to have that exposure. That's why, people use ASMR podcasts to go to sleep. They can't sleep naturally. They need something in their ear. That's why people have that white noise. Yeah,
Hey,
exactly. It's all based on that upbringing, and that's why I say Freud's one of the greatest bullshitters because he managed to convince all these people of all these god awful wrong things, but still managed to create these things that still sit with us today. So that's why I kind of like him.
that brings up another kind of question that I think is interesting, and sometimes people don't want to talk about it because we're so into labeling people: good
Oh yeah.
person, bad person, evil person, whatever. And that's this: there could be aspects of a person's personality, accomplishments, ideas that you could think they're the most vile person in the world, or you just don't agree with them. But there are aspects there that were right. The old
Mhm.
blind squirrel kind of thing.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
and that's and I don't get into politics, but that's one of the things that I really hate about politics these days. And my undergraduate degree was in political science. and that's
Oh
this:
gosh.
is Biden bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, Biden bad.
Yeah.
Well, can you give people credit sometimes for whatever there are things? So here, you're not a big believer in Freud, but there are aspects that
Oh,
are endearing, or these
I
pieces I can
admire.
hold on. Yes,
I admire. You
yes.
have to give credit where credit is due. If someone's doing it right, you have to do that. That's part of the process to success.
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
putting each other down for it, where does that get us? It gets
No.
us where we are today.
Oh,
Gets us where we
absolutely.
are, divided.
Well, let me ask you this: why are we so divided today?
We're so divided because we lack the proper communication. We have been given access to the most amazing forms of communication, and yet we look at it every single day and ignore what we're told.
Yeah,
And we're fed such vast amounts of BS that we just like that's the word, desensitized to it. And then we take it for granted, and then we assume that we have all the communication at our fingertips. We will know everything as soon as it happens. And look at how in the dark we are nowadays. We've taken it for granted. So that's why we're so divided. People aren't talking to each other. And
yeah.
then we're fed all this BS to tell each other, oh, this person's wrong, without even having a face-to-face interaction with somebody.
And I totally agree. And also, people don't understand context.
No.
Um, there are times that you want to look at your phone and just swipe, and you want to forget for a while, and you need that boost of endorphins that
Oh
you
yeah.
get when you see the 14th picture of a cat
Yep.
in a coffee cup.
Yep.
And we don't need to constantly be on the move.
No.
Um, there's like a balance, and I often said to people, without trying to sound, people, it's trying to sound deep, but it's really garbage.
Yeah.
No, you mentioned how quiet it is up where you lived, Squaw Valley. People don't realize how noisy quiet can be, and what I mean by that is it's quiet.
Yep.
And you almost hear a buzz. It's so quiet.
It's the beginning of tinnitus. You get hear ringing in your ear.
Yeah. Yes.
And, I'm so glad you brought up how loud silence can be. I have a roommate right now. He's from New York. And yep, he's a Long Island guy.
Good. Good. Good.
And he's moved in with me, and we visited my house just the other day, and he was like, "Wow, it is so quiet." And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's great." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's almost overwhelmingly quiet
Yes. Yep.
because it's just there's nothing." There's no,
Hmm.
and people get so their brain is already wired to constantly, feed all this information, and that when it's quiet, it starts working into overdrive trying to create its own sounds and like issues. So it's just what I'm so glad you brought up how loud quiet can be, because he had that moment. He's like, wow, it's a little overwhelming how quiet it is.
How tough was it to go from quiet to living on your own and the freedom that that brings? Because people, in my opinion, who say that they did it flawlessly are lying, or
No.
they don't realize that it was tougher than they thought.
Yeah.
Kind of talk
No.
about that.
So it was definitely a big jump for me. I mean, going from graduating with an eighth grade class of a middle school in the mountains with 32 people
Mhm.
to graduating a high school class with 1,000 plus,
Right.
or sorry, 700 plus. It was mind blowing for me. And then I had already, I had made friends with these people. I had integrated nicely enough, but one of my favorite stories is just my blissful ignorance was when I first got into high school. This was just the beginning of me experiencing constant noise.
Hmm.
And I didn't know proper terminology. We live in a very Hispanic culture, a lot of
Hmm.
Hispanic condensed culture, and Reedley is especially so, and
Sure.
it's
Sure.
so awesome.
Yes.
And when I moved down there, I didn't actually know that uh, when people were speaking Spanish, it was called speaking Spanish. I thought it was called speaking Mexican.
No, I get. Listen, I
And
get it.
I went up to my first friend that I had made who was Latino, and I was like, "Oh, you guys are speaking Mexican." And he's like, "What?" And I was like,
Right.
"Yeah." And he's like, "Dude, it's called Spanish." And I'm
Right.
like,
And
"What?" And that was just like the
I'm gonna
biggest
stop.
wake
I'm
up.
gonna stop you there.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, to some, not all, that's a racist comment.
Yeah.
Instead of it being, "Hey, my friend is going to correct me, and that's okay,"
Yeah. And I'm
right?
glad I made friends like that.
Right, yes. And that brings up another interesting question. And again, I'm a big you be you kind of person. I
Oh
just
yeah.
am, and I don't say that with any hubris.
Mhm.
Um, so, for example, I'm learning Spanish now.
That's
Way too
excellent.
old to have should have done it years ago. Um, so mi español poquito. Um,
I'm gonna write a note down because I have something you'd love on that actually.
Excellent. So, but I bring that up because why do you think more people here in our country don't study another language? And again, I want to ask that question in an enlightened way where it's not finger pointing like some people do.
No, no, most
And,
definitely.
and it doesn't need to be Spanish because if you go to Europe, you go to Asia, you go to India, they speak from the time they're a child. You go to Latin America, multiple languages.
2 to 3 languages each.
Yep.
2 to 3 languages each.
But here, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just we're doing observational psychoanalysis here.
Hmm.
Why do you think we only settle for one language?
So, what we're taught, are you familiar with how French is the language of love?
Yeah, sure.
What we're taught, what I was taught in schooling, is that English is the language of business.
It
And
is,
business
but
is
it is.
it is. It's a worldwide thing. But we're not encouraged unless you grow up in a multicultural household, obviously. You're not really encouraged to pursue that because people are people who speak different languages often moved here, immigrated here, and taught to pursue the American dream, which is English, buying a house, all that stuff. So it's really drilled into our culture in America that English is the way to go. And if you want to do something later, you can do that.
Mhm.
But what's something, and I wrote this down, something so valuable that we lose around age 9 to 10. You know how you were talking about how you're learning Spanish now and you have to repeat it to get it down?
Yep.
That's the only way. I wrote a thesis in college about something called the LAD, the
Right.
LAD I like to call it. It's called the
Nice.
language acquisition device.
I
Now
love it.
it's non-vestigial, which means it's not like a physical organ or something in our
Mhm.
body. It is a brain process from the age of about, being born to about 10 years old. You know how kids are sponges. They absorb
Sure.
knowledge. There is a device, the language acquisition device, which shuts off. It's just something in your head that shuts off at about 9 years old, where you just have to use repetition. That's why in high school you have all these different classes you have to take 4 years of because that's the only way to
Mhm.
teach you.
Yep.
But before that, you can learn any language you want in such a quick pace because your brain is still developing and bringing in all that knowledge, and it solidifies. But something, and I love thinking about it because my psych professor just taught me, is that about 9 or 10, it just
Yep.
shuts off.
No,
It's
that's
gone.
very true. That's very true. I did my thesis on pre-assessment testing for specifics to help people study and to learn, and that there was an aspect of that in it.
Yep.
Um, no, that's so true. And because what happened, the brain is this wonderful thing. We only know so little about the brain. But one thing it looks like it does is if this isn't being used, we're going to shut this off to
Exactly.
use it for something else.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to pursue, right? To connect it to why not many people in America are doing it. We are teaching it too late. By the
Yes.
time you're in high school where you have the option to take a foreign language,
Mhm.
you're already in your teens.
Yep.
That language acquisition device is already off. We are not giving the option as a whole to pursue this unless you're raised in a multicultural household that has another language being spoken all the time.
Right.
So, in my
Right.
opinion, I think the reason why a lot of Americans don't pursue a second language is we're just taught too late. It's too late. By the time we have the option to do it, it's too late. And it's such a grind set to get it down, repeat it, because it's hard.
Mhm.
Learning a new language is hard. It's no easy thing about it. And
No, I think you're right, and you want a great example of that, and
yes, of course.
which it might not be great, right? It might suck, um, but and that's this, and it has nothing to do with language, and but about learning.
Yeah.
I find it amazing. I work in a school.
Hmm.
Uh, my master's degree is in education.
Beautiful.
It's amazing that people say, well, kids today they want to be entertained or they want to, and again, there are these wonderful teachers out there. but the kids are not learning basic English and not learning basic social studies and not learning basic math. Yeah, but these same kids can upload files, can do shareware, do P2P. They can write code. Some of them they can do basic websites, and they're 9.
Yep. Yep.
And
Literal 9-year-olds
yeah,
doing all this.
and my point is they it's not that they need to be entertained. We need to be more interesting.
Yeah, we
We
need
need
to
to
expose
present.
them to more. We need to expose
Yes,
them to more. I did not have a phone until I was in high school. And that's because I was 40 minutes away from any safe parental safety. And like,
right.
okay, you can have a phone for that. I had, an iPod Shuffle until I was in 7th grade. Little box, no screen.
Explain to people what that is, because you might as well
Okay,
say
okay,
you had a you know
okay. You'll back in the day, not all iPods had a screen on it.
right,
So there was something called an iPod Shuffle, which you had to imagine it. It was about the size of 2 quarters. No, here we go. I have a rock. It was about the size of this rock.
right,
No screen, and it clipped onto your clothing, and you plugged your little earphones into it, and you listened to music. And you got a USB, and you uploaded music through your computer. You couldn't download an app, download your music. You plugged it into your computer,
right.
found what you had to do, and downloaded it there. And those are the only songs you had. So I had an iPod Shuffle basically up until that point. So I learned that I did not have a lot of screen exposure, and I think I'm better off with it. I've learned a whole newfound respect for it, and now I have access to that. I have a computer, game, stuff like that. But I have that moderation where I'm like, I need to go out and do something else.
Right.
Because if I sit here too long, it's not good.
Oh no,
But
I get it. It's like anything else.
mhm,
Too much is no good. Um, and again, there's some wonderful parents out there and adults making a lot of money, and not just money means happiness. But
mhm.
I tell people, money can't buy happiness, but it buys you things that make you happy. And what
Oh
it
yeah,
does is it gives you options. So in my old world, I was an executive director of a nonprofit,
okay,
and I bring that up because during the height of COVID, I've had some people, we'd have to do everything on Zoom, and not just
yep,
there, but anyway.
yeah,
And as we kind of moved away from that, and that was whether they're teachers, whether they're social workers, whether they're people in nonprofit world,
hmm
they'd be complaining about kids not learning whatever the case may be, whatever it is. These
yeah,
predetermined, this stuff is important, this STEM stuff is
yeah.
important, and it is, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying, wait a minute, 18 months ago, you didn't know how to put your name on Zoom. It's 18 months later, you still don't know how to do that. You
Nope.
still don't know how to save a Zoom call. You don't know how to, if you had a PC and now you're on Apple, you don't know any.
Don't know the difference now.
And I use that to kind of segue into our society. We are so quick to point fingers,
Oh,
regardless of the age.
ridiculous.
Instead of they can't do this, or these kids, yeah. Oh, but what about this? Remember, you point your finger, 3 fingers are pointed back at you. You need to look at yourself 3 times or more.
Accountability.
Yes. So,
Accountability. My favorite phrase is passing the buck. I
oh yeah.
refuse to pass the buck.
Well, let me ask you this though,
Mhm.
because I'm sure it works both ways. But as
Yep.
a teenager becoming a young adult,
Yep.
um, how frustrating is it to respect your elder,
Oh, it's
as you should,
infuriating.
but respect the position of that person, whether it's a boss at your job or in school, but at the same time see that they are not living by the code that they're telling you to live by.
It is infuriating to see that. And what I live by is I do not mind being led as long as that leader is competent. And I this is a little bit, not cliche, but a little bit of an out there example. Are you familiar with the Battle of Valley Forge?
Sure.
George Washington was already presidential candidate, general of the army, did not have to do a single thing really besides tell his men what to do. And yet, during the harshest winter at Valley Forge, he went, pitched his tent, set
Yeah.
up his horse, and he stayed in that valley with his men.
Yes, he
That
did.
is what I look for in leadership. Now, what I'm thinking where when you're saying how it's seeing someone telling you to do something and then doing the opposite, it's hypocrisy. It's annoying to see, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. I try and see from their perspective, and that's just the mindset I adopted. There's no
Which
point
is
in me
good.
trying to get frustrated. Yeah, I had to because there's just some dumb examples, and I love to tell you this. When I was 15 years old, I was going through a lot of that stress, and it was mostly with some parental figures that I was having issues with. So I wrote down, I basically started diary entries on a Google
Mhm.
Doc, and I've updated it since I was 15, and I read back my entries when I was struggling with the authoritarian thing. And you look at it and you're like, "Oh God, I was a kid." And I know every kid's worst thing to hear is you don't have enough experience because you're not old enough. I knew it pissed me off. I know it pisses people off nowadays. And I hate to tell it if there are younger listeners, unfortunately, it's the truth.
Right.
With
No, it
time,
is.
yeah, with time comes experience. It's annoying to hear, but it is the truth. You're gonna get more experiences at going. It annoyed me to no end because I thought I was the smartest guy. I was like,
Right.
I know what he's talking about, and yet, this is this. But, oh, you're not old enough to know. I hated hearing that was my least favorite thing to hear. But looking back on it, unfortunately, it is true.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with. I'm the president of National University's
Gosh, what
president.
aren't you, man?
Um, Young. So so I'm the president of the National University Alumni Association. And I bring it up because I was talking to our vice president, who used to be the president, and him and I are
Mhm.
such good friends. And he used this great term, which I just love, and that is we in our society uh, throw out the excellent when it's not perfect. And what I mean, so what happens is, and it speaks to young to old, old to young, we obsess on what they did wrong or said that was inaccurate and throw away all that stuff. Like we were talking about earlier with Freud and some of this other stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean,
Discouraging mistakes.
yeah, and then all of a sudden, our opinion of that person or whatever it is based on that one mess up, the
Yep.
time they farted in the elevator, you
Yep.
know. Instead of like, there's some important stuff here. I mean, I learn a lot from my children, and it's not
Hmm.
me trying to be young as much as trying to just be modern, be current.
Yep.
And so it's going to segue into another part that I want to talk to you about a little bit, and I'm going to have you back because
Of
we're
course.
flying through this time.
Oh,
Every
I just looked. I was like, oh God, we're already
Yeah,
half an hour
yeah,
in.
yeah. We're going to have you back every once in a while, sort of as just a hey, what's going on in the world
Of
kind of
course,
thing,
of
because
course.
I need to know, right?
Yeah.
And people want to know. But now here's something I want to talk to you about. Two things. One, well, let's talk about the other thing I was talking to you about first, and that's this: how frustrating it has to be that you can vote for the person that could blow up the world, and yet you can't buy a cigarette until you're 21, and
Oh,
they tell you that it's because they care about you, but
yep.
yet explain that to me because that never made any sense to me. Doesn't make
Uh,
any sense to you.
so, I'm just gonna preface this. I have no want for cigarettes or things like that. My dad was a firefighter. He's like, if I see you with a cigarette, I'm gonna smack you upside the head, what kind of deal. So
Right.
never really had a want for it. But looking at it, and I guess the most modern day example would probably here in California be marijuana.
Sure.
Let's just be honest. That's the most modern example I can think of. Because not a lot of kids or vapes. Oh, vapes. Yeah, you were mentioning earlier vapes. So walking in
Oh, by the way, do
freshly,
I've
yeah.
out of the million kids who I see vape, none of them say they ever put marijuana in. Shh, no, no. When we sit there, go, oh, I'm
Oh,
sure you
oh,
don't.
oh God, drug like
Yeah, yeah, and I'm
oh,
sure some don't, some do, but
honestly, you could talk to me about anything. The reason why I'm the way I am is because I have the experience with it. So if you have a question, shoot. I don't have that thin skin. But anyways, walking in as a fresh adult to my local Reedley 7-Eleven, 18 years
I
old.
love that term.
Oh yeah, yep. And I went in. I wanted to buy a lottery ticket. I just something I wanted to do. It was one of the first things I wanted to try. went in and I'm like, lottery ticket, please. And my ID, I still have it from when I first got my license as a kid. So I had braces and stuff on, and I didn't have braces anymore. And they're like, oh yeah, this is you. And I was like, hey, what about,
You had the
how old do you have to
McLovin.
be?
You had the McLovin
Oh yeah,
ID.
yep, I was McLovin ID. Except maybe a little bit better hair though.
Right.
But anyways, I walk in and I see this was at the time when, the flavored stuff was really at its
Sure.
peak. 2018, it was pre-COVID. Regulations were on their way, but
Right.
not quite there yet. So I walk in, I'm like, oh, I'll get a vape because I had tried a vape once and they're like, here, I said, do you have any non-nicotine ones? And they're called zeros. And I just kind of like the smoke thing,
Right. The
whatever. I didn't
process.
really like the nick. Yeah.
The oral
And
fixation.
and I was like, do you can I buy those since they're no nicotine? They're like, no, it's still a tobacco product. And it just had one of those moments of clarity where I was like, wow, we're screwed. This is what I'm acceptable. I'm allowed to go spend my life savings
Yep.
and ruin my entire life with this
Because they can make
lottery
money
ticket,
off you.
no
Yeah.
matter how, with the false promise that I'll win the lottery. Yet
Hmm.
I can't buy a $5 water cool thing.
Yeah.
Wow. It was like, geez, this is what it's like. Okay. And it was rather alarming. I'm not gonna lie. It was a little bit scary to walk in and see that. And then it was funny because right after me, a guy, I'd assume late 20s, early 30s, came in and he bought about 5 different flavored vape carts. And then I walked out to my car and he walks out and he's hitting all 5 at once. And that's when I solidified. I was like, wow, that is an issue I don't want to have to deal with.
Oh,
Because
no doubt.
I like maintaining good hygiene and stuff. I know that stuff is just not good for you. Highly addictive, not my preference.
Which is great.
But yeah, it was just like, wow, this is what the reality is. And being an adult and then throwing yourself into the adult world from an area where you have almost no social exposure, it was quite a rude awakening, but it was one that I needed to make me realize what the world around me was like.
And the second question I was going to ask
Hmm.
and is this: fentanyl is
Oh God.
just killing people.
Oh
You
yeah.
know this.
Straight up killing people.
Yep. And I still talk to people about that, and they say, "Not my problem." And again, I'm not saying you should lose your sleep and never sleep again.
Yeah.
Not my problem. Not my kid. Not my. First of all, you'd be surprised to know that the second highest demographic of people dying of fentanyl accidental poisonings is 60 and older, because
Oh.
they grab, did I take my pill? No, I forgot. And they take two, and that happens. Right?
Yep.
So, um, because the pill they took was not from the pharmacy, and some
Nope.
other place.
No. They
So,
got it from Jerry down the street.
exactly. So, here's what I want to ask you again: your thoughts.
Hmm.
Do most people your age understand how devastating it is? And we also know, let's not that there's people who still will take and they carry
Yeah.
Narcan with them,
Yeah. The
just in
ignorance.
case.
Yep.
But because to me, there's still people who don't get that this thing is in everything these days.
Yep.
If you, Quinn, you, Darren, um, you, Jake, you, whoever,
Yep.
didn't get it yourself in the pharmacy, you better understand it's got baby powder in it and it's probably got fentanyl in it and
Yeah.
could kill you. Do people
No.
understand that?
I have such a perfect example. So in the Central Valley, there is a massive street market for wax pens
Mhm.
called not moon rocks, but there's street wax cartridges, which is refined THC, marijuana
Right.
basically. And there is a massive underground market for it, of which I got to see firsthand actually. And what they don't realize is, you go to a dispensary, that is all safe things. A dispensary is a company, it's a business, it has
Yep.
regulations, you can buy it from there, but you have to be an adult to go there. You have to be 21. Now, when I obviously, for the record, was not 21 when I had these, but and that's the funny thing, smoking weed is not illegal for an 18-year-old to do, but yet possessing possessing it is. Like, you can be as long as you're an adult, 18 and above, you can smoke weed, but you can't go buy it, which is I find hilarious. That's what the part for me was hilarious.
Right.
But
Forcing
I
you,
actually,
forcing you to get it off the street.
yep, forcing you to get it off the street, and they have this massive market. And I actually had an acquaintance who got a not only fentanyl crossed, because the street carts, their purity is not very high.
No,
Like,
no.
think about Breaking Bad, right? You know, they
Yeah.
had the highest pure meth, whatever. It's same with the street carts. They have to cut it with other things to get,
That's true.
that high.
Yeah.
And my friend, or not friend, this acquaintance actually went to the hospital and almost died, had his full stomach, his his blood system pumped, because he got a single street cart. Probably did, he was a pretty big vapor, so he was hitting it,
Sure.
getting high, having a good time. But we found out it had traces of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and then the one crazy, it actually had PCP laced into it.
Oh, of course. Of course.
And it was just, he almost died from it.
I
So
remember when I wanted to choke somebody one time, and I say one time, many times.
many times.
And I mentioned how they're putting this fentanyl, in marijuana, and in these what you call them, vape,
Yeah, just carts. Just
the
call them
carts,
carts.
yeah, and all over that. And here's why. You actually answered the question,
Mm-hmm.
and that's this: the stuff at the dispensary is potent, kick ass,
Yeah.
and I'm not telling people go use it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is,
It's safe.
That's safe. I'm a big harm reduction person. My job is to advocate that you live till tomorrow and we can figure it out then. I don't want you dying in that bedroom. I don't
Because
want
I
you
can't do
dying.
anything about it.
So we had a situation in Visalia not too long ago where parents both had pain, and it wasn't marijuana. Their children get ready for school, found them both dead in the bathroom because the Percocets they took were filled with fentanyl.
Oh,
So my point is, so what happens is this: is you can't go to the dispensary, right? You can't go. So what do? You go to Knucklehead Smith up the street, and
you hit up your Snapchat contact called the Muffin Man, and
yes,
he gets you your good stuff, and he gets you
right.
your high for about twice as much as what you'd pay at a dispensary.
And by the way, he feels, or she feels, they feel that they have to put that stuff in there,
Yeah,
because they need to make it
get
more
their
potent.
Yep, their potency.
Yep, and save some of the marijuana for the next time.
Yep.
It happens all the time. You do your emojis, you pay on Venmo, shows up to your house like DoorDash,
Yep.
you're dead.
Yep.
And I've never killed anybody, until now.
Well, now.
Because, by the way, you're not a meth expert. You're hoping for the best.
No. You're hoping for the best. You're doing it in your kitchen or your backyard.
Yes.
You don't have any. You could be like, oh, I've been growing my whole life. Doesn't make you a chemist.
Doesn't make. That's what I was looking for. Yeah. Not at all. So, and by the way, you haven't that you're aware of.
Yep. You don't actually know. No. You have no idea where it's going. And I've gone on my fair share of ride-alongs, we'll just say, not with police, but with other people. I've seen how the business works.
You out socially, and
I'm out socially. I've seen it happen, and I'm not gonna hate on it. It's their way of living. I just have zero respect for it. It's they're actively putting this stuff in
everybody's home. I truly believe it should be in everybody's home. Because you don't know, and I'm a big harm reduction advocate.
Yep.
So we'll talk again, but I always like to leave a podcast with sort of a funny question, and then you can feel free to ask me one, because we just want to talk about works, and we want to talk about some other things.
Oh, we got more time. I'm willing to come back. I've loved this.
So, the most underrated movie of all time.
Not only I believe is the most underrated movie, it has not only underration, cult following, but it's also my favorite movie of all time, The Princess Bride. Not enough people in this day and age have watched The Princess Bride.
Why is that?
I have no idea. It has thriller, drama, sword fighting, romance, a little bit of horror, things.
Mhm.
It has literal comedy, everything, literally everything. And I think people just need to watch it more.
Good
It
luck
is such a
storming the
great
castle.
movie. Good luck storming the castle. You never challenge a Sicilian to a
Right.
game of wits.
Yes.
So
It's
it's
a
just
great movie.
my dad. It was one of my dad's. The funniest thing, my dad's favorite movie is the original Mary Poppins with Dick Van Dyke. So I had all those original movies,
Oh,
that
great movie.
exposure. A great movie,
Now,
and it
now,
was.
now, did your dad see Saving Mr. Banks?
Oh yeah, we watched Saving Miss. It was
Did
he.
you cry? I
Oh
could
no,
wait.
I didn't cry.
No, I
She
listen.
did, I
I
think.
did. I did when she, the author of Mary Poppins,
Yep.
is in the theater watching it,
Oh, that was such a
and
moment.
she's thinking about her relationship with her dad,
Yeah,
because that's
that was a
reality.
moment.
And as a fireman, my dad was a policeman. They see a lot of those people who struggle with alcohol.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
But he as soon as that movie was out, he was like, "Quinn, we're going to see that movie together." And I was like, "All right, Dad, let's go." But yeah, I all-time favorite and just underrated as heck. Princess Bride has the best one-liners ever. My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. My dad had a shirt with that on
oh,
it,
that's great.
and it was just. I think it's something everyone should watch. It's for everybody. It's
Okay,
for
th
everybody.
this has been a great conversation. People love you, I'm sure, but now people will hate you because I'm going to ask you
Oh,
a
I don't.
bonus question. You ready?
Okay, I thrive on conflict. Let's go, Darren.
Okay, great. That's good. So here's the thing. Um, Most overrated. You have to pick one.
Oh,
All right. The Harry Potter series, Star Wars, or the Hobbit people. What that whole thing.
Lord of the
Lord of
Rings.
the Rings.
Lord of the.
Hobbit.
Okay,
That'll get me
so we
angry. That's
got.
going to get people angry
y-
at me if we just call him the Hobbit thing.
Okay,
J.R. Tolkien,
okay.
who's a
So
wonderful author.
I'm going to preface. I like all the series. I've read most of the books.
Quinn doesn't want hate
I'm
mail,
going to
kids.
have. I know, just as little as possible. I'm going to have to say that Harry Potter's the most overrated, and not only that, has the most toxic community as well.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
very toxic.
And how? I mean,
That's mine.
and that wonderful Beast nonsense is just. I've tried to watch it.
Oh,
Just terrible.
oh, I tried. It was not great. It was not great. I like the actor. The first one was all right, but then the whole Johnny Depp thing went. That's a whole nother conversation. But that happened, and it just got way too political. So the Lord of the Rings, they got their trilogy out of the way. Cult classic, loved. Star
Yes.
Wars, probably one of the biggest fan bases in the world, so widespread and loved by everybody.
Mhm.
I think if I have to say, as far as modern day overration, the new I hate the new trilogy. All that garbage is just
Oh,
it's garbage. I hate it.
it's
I
it's
hate it.
it's Muppets in space. It's
It's
terrible.
disrespectful. It's
Oh, absolutely.
disrespectful.
It's just not good. It's just, well, you got to understand. Listen, you do you. I mean, if you enjoy it, that's great. It's like for
Yeah,
me,
great. Go
you
for it.
for me, and again, I'm not going to pick any of those three. That's your
Yep.
question. You can ask me one.
Yep.
But for me, I
All right.
like the
All right.
original Planet of the Apes over any of that. That whole post-apocalyptic, I
You
love
like the
that.
post-apocalypse.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. My son Jake and I are big zombie fans. I'm into that whole, that's, and by the way, I do enjoy Lord of the Rings, the first three, the whole the Hobbit stuff, just enough. Just trying to drain my money. I just, let's leave it
Yeah.
where it is.
It's gone a little too far at this point.
It's Fast
You
and
know, you
Furious.
know
It's
what's
Fast and
crazy?
Furious 9.
Oh, that's the most overrated movie of all a series is Fast and Furious nowadays. I am not a fan of it. To this day, I haven't watched it in its completion, and
Because
it's
I
just
can't.
I can't. I physically can't. And yeah, so I'm trying to think of something.
So, yeah, fire something at me.
All right, so you say I like how you're always talking about how you put in the effort to be more modern.
Hmm?
What are you most okay, actually, would you be more? Nah, I got nothing. What are you
No,
most
no, I
afraid
know.
of
I think I
learning
know.
the
I
modern?
think I know where you're going, and I'll answer the question.
What are you most worried about the upcoming of the modern generation? What aspect of the modern generation worries you the most?
That they're being indoctrinated not to think and to just respond.
Yep. robots, brick in the
Yep.
wall.
Yep. Oh, by the way, how have you ever seen that video?
No, I haven't.
I want you to do me a favor today. I'm giving you homework. A little homework on a
Okay,
Saturday, kids.
homework.
I want you to
Whew.
watch the video for Another Brick in the Wall and watch the whole thing. It's about 8 minutes, and by Pink Floyd. And then I want you to text me or email me.
Right.
It'll blow your mind because this was written in, I don't know, 81,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about today. You know, it really is. But Quinn Johnson, how could people get a hold of you? And I don't mean like a kidnapping, which is bad. Kidnapping bad.
Listen, all I'm gonna say is you can see the camera. I'm not sure the audience can't, but that's right there, just waiting. So
Right.
we'll leave it at that. I'm not gonna say what it is.
They'll see because
Yeah,
we'll have this on YouTube.
I'm not gonna say what it is.
He
but
plays
that's
pool,
wait.
kids. Maybe
I play pool. It's a
Maybe.
pool bag. I got a camo pool bag.
Yes.
But
he's hiding it.
You can reach out to me. Honestly, I don't have a massive social media presence. You can find me on Instagram, QuinnDJ12, Facebook, Quinn Johnson. I have a little Lincoln Park thing. It's not too hard to find. Other than that, I have Discord, of things like that, and I'll send you a couple things if you want to put it in your description or anything like that.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna kind of put this toward the near top of my podcast rotation. And we'll be on again in a couple of weeks because we have a lot more to talk about.
Sounds perfect. I'll try and find more issues to talk about by then.
Oh, absolutely. And Quinn Johnson's our guest, kids. Oh, my last question, my bonus question, my favorite question of all time. I know you. You are a you be you kind of guy.
Yep.
All right. So you, your friends, Jake, some other people, you're out there.
Yeah.
It's 10 o'clock at night. You're about to watch the Brick in the Wall video, and you're gonna have cereal because why not? You eat cereal late at night. You're a you do you guy, but one of your friends puts the milk in first. Do you say anything?
No, I don't. But do you want to know what I do?
What do you do?
I dump it out and then I'd keep doing that until he does it right.
I love that answer.
He's gonna waste a lot of milk until he learns how to do it right.
Thank you.
I have a bonus for you.
Go ahead.
Do you hang the toilet paper so it's forward facing or rear facing?
That's one of the things that really annoy me. I'm over the top guy.
Over the top.
Yes.
Good man. Good man.
You have to be.
All right, I can come back happy, Darren. I can come back happy.
Oh, absolutely. Without question. It was a pleasure. Be well.
It was a pleasure, Darren. You stay safe. Have a good one.
Bye now.